I hold in my hand the Christian Bible. This is the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, which is a little bit derogatory, as if it's old and discarded, and this is the New Testament. When Mike quotes passages from the prophets who criticize the Jewish people, they are spread liberally throughout the entire width of this large book. When we speak about castigations, condemnations, attacks on the Jews, for example, being the children of Satan, there are 450 in this small book. They average 2 per page. I want to read you a small synopsis of the New Testament, and I want you to tell me, given that there are essentially 2 groups discussed in the New Testament, the Romans, the occupiers, and the Jews who are being occupied, who is this referring to? Okay, who's this referring to? Vipers and poisonous snakes, hard-hearted hypocrites, thieves and robbers, the blind leading the blind, people who reject God's commandments and reject God's purpose, people who plotted on multiple occasions to kill God incarnate in flesh and eventually did, people who said that God's blood should be on them and on their children forever, Matthew 27. People who said that they are filled with yeast and arrogance. People who have no love for God in their hearts. People who don't know Jesus nor his Father. And finally, people who are descendants of their father, the devil. Are we speaking of the Romans or the Jews? Anyone want to guess? Come on, help me here. Are we speaking of the Romans, the ancient occupier, murderous, bloody, brutal Rome, or the Jews? We Jews are a righteous people. We're tired of hearing that we deserve what we get. The Holocaust was not because we don't believe in Jesus. The Holocaust was because humanity and Germany turned to barbarity. Let me prove to you for a quick moment that portions of the New Testament were edited to make the Jews look murderous. In Acts chapter 9, verse 23, the story is told about the Apostle Paul, quote, "After many days had passed, the Jews conspired to kill Paul. But Paul, Saul, learned of their plot, and one night his disciples took him and lowered him in a basket through a window in the wall." So who's trying to kill Paul? The murderous Jews. You'll soon discover how many times the Jews are described as murderous in the New Testament. But the real story told by Paul himself in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 is this. In Damascus, the governor under King Aretas, ally of Rome, had the city of the Damascenes guarded in order to arrest me, Paul. But I was lowered in a basket from a window in the wall and slipped through his hands. Do you understand what's happening here? The Romans and their allies are trying to kill Paul because Jesus' followers are claiming that Jesus is the Jewish king, which is a capital offense to Rome. You have to worship the emperor. But in Acts, it has changed. It's no longer the Romans who are trying to kill Paul. It is the Jews. And if that's not anti-Semitism, a blood libel, then I don't know what is. And yet we're told Pilate is sitting there, Matthew 27, arguing with the Jews who are praying for Jesus' blood. Crucify him! Let Barabbas go! Barabbas is a murderer. Let him go! And suddenly Pilate, genocidal mass murderer, suddenly cares for the leader of a tiny sect, and he says to the Jews, "Bring a pitcher of water. I need to wash my hands. I wanted for the historical record that while I've killed tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, I suddenly care about one Jew." And then it suddenly says in Matthew that all the Jews claimed his blood be upon us and upon our children. Do you know how many Jews died throughout the centuries because of that one verse? Do you know how many of my people were disemboweled, burned at the stake, expelled, and ultimately, as Christian anti-Judaism morphed into racial anti-Semitism, gassed? Because the charge of deicide was believed, America's an imperfect country. But we know the difference between patriotism is whether you essentially believe in the nation and its mission, or whether you give up and say, let's replace them with someone else. That is the anti-Semitism of the New Testament. That the Jews were replaced. That the Jews were discarded. That the Jews, John says, are quite literally the children of Satan. Do you know what demonic power of which you must be possessed to kill God? Do you know how dark you have to be to kill God? And if you believe that someone is that evil, would you have a problem killing that person? Burning him at the stake? Kicking him out of your country with his children with nothing to eat when he's the spawn of the devil? It's for this reason that the Vatican itself wrote, quote, some New Testament references hostile or less favorable to Jews have their historical context. This is the Vatican. In conflicts between the nascent church and the Jewish community. Certain controversies reflect Christian-Jewish relations long after the times of Jesus. Translation? They inserted these verses 40, 50 years after the death of Jesus to destroy the Jews and exonerate the Romans. Now, why would they do that? Simple. Logic. Our hands are stained with blood. It will not change until my dear friend Mike Brown and my dear friend Mitch Glazer and all my friends at Chosen People Ministries, and we're all going out to dinner afterward because we're friends, until they get up and say, we utterly renounce and repudiate now and forever a belief that Jews who don't believe in Jesus are going to hell, until that is stated emphatically and clearly, then the hatred, God forbid, even if it's not wanted, might just continue.